Welcome, everybody, to the PHDJ podcast. My name is Mike.
This is Joe Bunn.
And we have a special guest. And I'm racking my brain. Is this the first time we have a repeat guest on, Joe?
I would say yes.
I think so. Say hello, everybody, do you prefer Digital Dave or Dave Lander? What do you prefer, Dave?
Yeah, Digital Dave.
Digital Dave Lander.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dave.
So you've in near 200 shows, you've never had a repeat guest for real?
I'm trying to think. I don't think
That's
so.
a fact. That's
so
a
you know
fact.
what?
Wow.
Somebody might be yelling at their
right.
I was on twice. I was on. Here's what didn't Mitch's episode go so long we made two out of it, but that was really just
Didn't
one.
count. Yeah.
Yeah, that was part one and part two. So
right.
And Dave, you our listeners probably remember because they remember everything we ever say. Dave is the in-stadium DJ for the only undefeated team.
Ooh, I knew that was coming
right now.
Yes,
Very good,
yes.
Dave.
Let's
and that's
go
all
Steelers.
it's because of the music you play.
Let's go Steelers.
The perfect music that motivates them, as opposed to whoever's DJing for the Cowboys, who must be playing the worst. He's playing Air Supply. He's dropping Air Supply in between every play.
Oh my God. I know the Cowboys DJ actually.
Give him some advice, please, for me.
Okay.
Can you drop box him a couple songs?
I think the problems go deeper than that.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
much.
Yeah. And speaking of sports, we are recording this the morning after the Los Angeles Dodgers have won the World Series. I know what a big baseball fan Joe is. I got to watch some baseball with Joe. Do you realize, what was it, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I saw you post that picture.
We were
recently.
in LDI at Las Vegas.
Yeah, you
Best
made me watch the
conference
game.
we've ever spoken at.
Oh, we crushed it at that conference.
Joe and I spoke at a seminar at that conference with four. It was me and Joe and four other people in the room.
And one of the four was the badge checker.
Right. One of the four. was the badge checker.
We killed it.
So my friend George Lopez, I know, is a big Dodger fan, but to any other Dodger fans out there, congratulations! First championship in what, 32 years?
32 years.
Yeah, the infamous Kirk Gibson home run pinch hit home run series was the last time they won.
That's right, and that was the first month I was DJing weddings. So that tells you the gap in between.
In between their championships.
So here's why we're having Digital Dave on. We did a music show a couple of weeks ago that, first of all, Joe would like to take a mulligan on. But Dave contacted us afterwards. Dave is a loyal listener and contributor, and said he felt there were a couple of topics we could have added, and he also wanted to weigh in. And since Dave is such a great music guy, we thought we'd give him that opportunity to share even more stuff with our listeners. So that's what Dave is mainly here for, right?
Yeah, man.
Joe, do you want to take turns giving him these
No, I'm going to let you kind of run this thing, Mike, and then when I want to pull my mulligan, that'll be the last thing we say before we move to the next chapter.
So in case you forget or you didn't listen, but by the way, go back and re-listen 2 weeks ago. I think it was a great episode. But
it was.
I put together 8 categories, and we've now expanded that, I believe, to 10. 10. That's right.
10.
Yes. And what Joe and I did was we gave 2 no-brainers and then one, call it a deep track, call it whatever, something obscure, but that would fit into that. So we started with ballads. So Dave, give us your 2 no-brainer ballads and then give us a, wow, I can't believe he played that kind of ballad.
So for the ballads were interesting for me because it's the thing I feel that you could go in the most different directions,
100%.
From old to new. And so I went, my first one was Thinking Out Loud, Ed Sheeran, which I think is one of the bigger ones of the past 10 years, obviously. I think one of you guys had it on your list, I believe.
I did.
I think Joe did, yeah. And then my second one was actually, which I feel like this era of music gets forgotten to an extent as far as the ballads go, but it was a huge era for ballads. My second one is actually I'll Make Love to You by Boyz II Men.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
I mean, that was,
Make it
that
sexy.
was, yeah. I mean, that was a 14-week #1 song in the 90s. And I mean, Boyz II Men kind of dominated the charts at the time. And I feel that, especially for like the parents, aunts, uncles group at a wedding, I feel that that's like just perfectly in that age range.
Mm-hmm.
And then Deeper Cut for me, this was really tricky because, again, it could go in so many different directions. But what I finally ended up settling on was New Edition's Can You Stand the Rain?
Wow. That is
I love that song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one that, I could don't think it's one I don't play a ton, but it's one I don't know if I could ever think of playing where someone hasn't given me that, oh wow, I can't believe you played this, reaction.
Yeah, I speaking of ballads, it is too broad of a category just to say one, because there are oldies ballads, there are like you said, there's some 90s R&B ballads. Another one that often gets overlooked is power ballads from the 80s. And you probably need to have the right crowd, but if you drop Faithfully by Journey or just one of those soaring big ballads in there, if on the right crowd, they'll often be like, wow, this is pretty cool. So
all the like REO Speedwagon and all that stuff. It's definitely, I mean, this is the one I started thinking of, and I'm like, wow, you could go, do the whole 50s, 60s thing. And, I'm weird about, another consideration I had was The Way You Look Tonight by Frank Sinatra, which I know, Mike, you had as one of yours. And that's a weird one for me because people kind of, quote unquote, slow dance to it, but it's not really a slow,
it's technically
slow song,
a foxtrot. So to me, it's a mid-tempo. And like I said, I like to do that. I like to go slow song, mid-tempo, upbeat. So for me, it's the perfect climb on that ladder.
Right.
I will pull a mulligan on my deep cut. I had Die a Happy Man, Thomas Rhett, which everybody kind of, felt like wasn't a deep cut. So my deep cut is Never Stop by the band Safety Suit, and it's the wedding version. You got to, because one's real power ballad heavy, but it's the wedding version. Not that nobody's ever played that, but it's a killer first dance.
I might need you to send me that.
It's on Spotify, but I will send it to you. It's an amazing song.
And I don't feel like I need a mulligan for ballads, but one that I love whipping out every once in a while is the Climax Blues Band, I Love You.
I remember that.
When I was.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about that song that it was a big wedding song, I guess, mid-'80s. And I still play that from time to time.
I actually got to give Joe props on that one. That is, I'm familiar with that. And
see, Joe, this Joe
good.
Is making.
I
knew you had it in you.
I knew you had it in you. And that one actually sometimes too. If I'm not going to play it during the night, I mean, I sometimes throw it into dinner music too.
Yes, same.
My favorite story about about dinner music, when I first started DJing, they gave us cassettes for dinner music, like half hour. And one of the songs that was on there was Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers.
Oh, shit.
Because nobody used to, it was not.
Oh, it wasn't
Ghost. It was not that big, but then Ghost came out and basically revived that song. And now all of a sudden, halfway through dinner, you'd pack your dance floor, and the maitre d's yelling at you. So we had to take that. We had to take that cassette dinner mix out.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right, so let's go 50s, 60s rock and roll. Dave, what do you got for us?
Okay, so first one on my list is "Twist and Shout" by the Beatles.
Yep, I have that.
And that is definitely, I would say that's for the most part, it's usually one of the only 50s, 60s rock and roll songs I ever play at weddings. I used to play more, but as time has passed and crowds have gotten, not younger, but, older music is much further away. It used to be 50s and 60s when I started. It was appealing to the parents. Now it's appealing to the grandparents. So
hold on, Dave. I have to ask then, does that include Shout?
That well,
do you? In other words, do you rarely play Shout?
I rarely. I don't. I play Shout sometimes. I mean, it's not in every wedding song for me. But that one is weird because that I would more throw into the R&B category because it's Isley Brothers.
Yep.
I mean that one was. There were some songs that were between the R&B. Like one thing that I have played on occasion is "I've Got a Woman" by Ray Charles, and that was one that I'm like, does that go in R&B or does that go in rock and roll? Because it has aspects of both. So
well, and the thing is, we all need to understand when artists sit down to write music, they don't say, "I'm going to make an R&B song. I'm going to make a rock and roll song." There are the lines are blurred often. So it's not. I mean, Joe, you threw in "Do You Love Me" last week in this category. And
I did.
I'd accept that, but I mean, some people would say that's more of an R&B song, but I'd accept it anyway. So "Twist and Shout."
So "Twist and Shout" was my first, and my second was actually going to later 60s was actually "Satisfaction" by the Rolling Stones. I have not played it a ton, but anytime I have played it, I've gotten great reactions from it.
One of the most famous opening riffs in all of music.
Oh yeah. Hey,
which,
I'll go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Keith Richards claims he dreamt. You ever hear this? Did you read?
No.
read the story?
Tell
He
this.
claims he woke up in the middle of the night with it in his head. He used to have a cassette recorder next to him for just that type of thing. He played it couple times to get it down and then went back to sleep. And he claims the next morning he woke up, rewound the tape, and the tape consisted of a couple of minutes of the riff and then 45 minutes of him snoring. And it's probably an urban legend because that cassette doesn't exist or that tape doesn't exist anymore. But it is a funny story to think
It's
of.
a great story.
Yeah.
Now, Mike, was that on in your book? Was that in This Day of Music?
Yeah.
I remember reading that. Okay,
That was on this.
I remember. I remember reading.
So those are your two no-brainers. Where do you go when you want to blow people away?
So deep cut was a little harder for me because I feel like anything that's this old, like you're not going to be playing like deep cuts because I don't know. It needs to be something that a younger crowd would still
react,
have, mental access to. Yeah. So sure. My deep cut, which was one that I think used to be a much more played song at weddings and has kind of faded away, was Louie Louie by the Kingsmen.
Very good. Yeah.
I do remember that being big when I started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that was a song that 15, 20 years ago was big in the rotation of, wedding music and just kind of, took a little back seat. But I feel like it would work, that if you had the right crowd for sure.
Well, and going back to my story about Unchained Melody and Ghost, a lot of times movies or TV shows can keep a song current or bring a song back. And I know Louie Louie is in Animal House, and I'm sure it has been in plenty of enough movies and
tons
and TV
of movies,
shows that every generation probably at least recognizes it. So yeah, I think that's a good one. So let's go to 60s R&B.
I had a quick. I did have a quick mulligan.
Did you have a
mulligan?
Well, because give us a mulligan with each one.
No, almost because "Do You Love Me" was kind of questionable if it was rock and roll. So I did go with "Jailhouse Rock" by the King, Elvis.
Cool.
Go ahead, keep moving.
I like it.
Thanks.
So 60s R&B, I know I kind of confused Joe by putting Motown into this last time, so I took it out of your description. But I know Dave, you understand the way the
ramifications.
So
right. Well, I do understand, but I'm also very much. If you would have told me Motown, I would have only gone Motown songs.
Right.
Same.
So, and by the way, let's interject that for listeners. Dave, you spin a set every Monday called Motown Monday.
No. I played guest sets. I used to actually do an every Sunday Motown brunch back in the day, but there's a Motown on Mondays. There are a lot around the country, but it originated in San Francisco, and it's a weekly party that now occurs in several different cities, but it's well known in the DJ community, and they started doing streaming shows once the pandemic occurred. So I actually played on their streaming shows, and I do have a recording of my set from there, as well as some of my Motown brunches, which were a few years back on my Mixcloud. So
your knowledge in this category is deep.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the genre. So
give us two and one.
So my two, and actually it's funny because probably my if we did four major ones, my next two actually would have been your two would have been Ain't Too Proud to Beg and Sugar by Honey Bunch. But my top two were Respect by Aretha. I don't know if I've ever gotten a bad reaction from that. And my second one was I Want You Back by the Jackson 5.
Yeah.
And that song, to me, I've always said if DJs had to draft songs, that would be the number one song on my draft board. Like, I have played that song at a nightclub for 21-year-olds. I've played that song at weddings. I've played it at corporate events. I've played it at high school dances. To me, that is the most universal song, in my opinion, in my experience as a DJ, that I can play absolutely anywhere. So that
I think Dave just gave us our idea for our next year's music show.
Dude, I was just sitting there thinking
how great would that be?
Like a fantasy draft, but a song.
Have the three of us, and I don't know, maybe a Nate Nelson or maybe one other guy on, and we have to draft our top 25.
As soon as he said that, I heard the light bulb go. Ding.
I love it. Okay, so store that one away.
All right.
So great. So that's your top. Oh, I could do a whole show on whether ABC or I Want You Back is a better song, but let's not go down that rabbit hole. So where's your deep Motown track?
So the deep cut for me, I know so much about the genre, and I played deep cuts to a Motown crowd, and so I know much deeper cuts than this, but I was trying to come up with something I considered a deep cut that would still be, I guess accessible to a mainstream crowd. So the deep cut I came up with actually was I Can't Get Next to You by the Temptations.
Ooh, great.
It was definitely a unique tempo for Motown. Most Motown was more up in like the 120s, and this was almost more around 110 and was more a predecessor to like the 70s, almost James Brown breaks style of R&B and soul. So it was a little bit different of a sound than the other Motown that was coming out when it came out. But it's one of my favorite Temptations records, and so yeah, that was my deep cut.
And so, Dave, as a DJ, when you play these songs, are you playing the originals or remixes for the most part, or varies?
So with most of my Motown, I have what I would consider a lot of quote unquote tasteful redrums. So I have a lot of redrums that I feel were very much like a straightforward redrum, just kind of gave the song a little more oomph. They didn't really change anything about it, and it wasn't something that was so modern sounding that it took away from the feel of the original. But obviously, when you're playing modern music on a big sound system and then you go back to a Motown song and you use an original version and there's like no bass or no kick in it, it does kind of sound a little you know. So I have a collection of what I would deem tasteful redrums of these, and although Jackson 5, actually I Want You Back, there is actually, this was done in the mid to late 2000s. Actually, Joe Maz and Discotheque actually did with the original stems of the song, basically like an 808 version that really almost sounds like a hip hop beat, but it's the same instrumentation. It's, the same vocals, but it's something that you can play in the middle of, like This Is How We Do It, and just sounds like it has the same amount of punch behind it, if not a little more. So that's one of the few that kind of is a modernization, but to me, it's still a very tasteful modernization, and still hits pretty hard.
Cool.
I on that version of I Want You Back, I play Z Trips because I think he had the stems as well. It's a great version.
Joe, are you happy with your selections, or do you need?
No, I do not. I have a mulligan because "Got to Give It Up" was not even in the '60s by Marvin Gaye, so I apologize for that again.
But it was Motown. It was
Motown, correct. So I went more into R&B '60s this time. So it's "Stand By Me," but not by Benny King. It's the Otis Redding version, which has a little more swing to it. And people down here would shag to it. And apologies to the people in England. That is not
shagging. Shagging's a lot more fun in England than it is down in Carolina.
All right.
I just think of Austin Powers immediately when I hear the word shag.
Yeah, baby. All right,
very good. So Dave mentioned how R&B, 60s R&B, a lot of it was a precursor to the disco sound. And I think if you follow the evolution of music, that becomes very clear. So that makes our next topic the perfect segue. 70s disco. What do you got?
So for 70s disco, this was probably one of my easiest categories because I play these two songs at almost every wedding, and I really don't play a ton of other disco at most weddings. So this was September by Earth, Wind and Fire and Don't Stop Till You Get Enough by Michael Jackson.
Nice. Very cool.
And
Don't Stop Till You Get Enough is barely at the end of it's just as the window of disco was closing. That album, what is that off of?
Off the Wall, I think.
Off the Wall, right. That album is like the last disco thing before the window closed.
Yeah. But I was like, I want to make sure I always check myself on these things. And I'm like, I want to make sure it's not officially considered post disco, but it was considered.
Yeah, I would consider it disco.
Mike allowed it. Mike allowed it.
I think of it as Indiana Jones whenever he's running and like the wall is coming down and like he loses his hat and he has to reach in and grab his hat. That was basically that Michael Jackson album. Yeah. All right. So, and then your deep track of disco?
My deep track was "Ain't No Stopping Us Now" by McFadden and Whitehead.
Ooh,
I love
that
it.
song.
That's a great song. What an uplifting message in that song as well.
It's got all those strings in it too. It's just so over the top.
Well,
I
that's
love
so
that.
classic disco with the strings.
Hey, Kelly in the background
Kelly's,
digging around for something.
Our puppy is. We discovered our puppy is urinating a little down here. So Kelly's
I left my 70s disco, so we can move on if you guys are
okay,
ready.
good.
Yeah.
So we moved to 80s pop.
Yes, sir.
What do you got, Dave?
So for 80s pop, I mean, this was to me so broad, and I know so much 80s music, and I could go in so many different directions, with it. So my first one was It's Tricky by Run DMC.
Yes.
And my second one was Take On Me by Aha.
I love
Nice.
that too.
Okay. Very cool.
And
One of the great videos
Aha's,
of all time.
Yes.
Take
and
On Me.
Aha's also kind of regained new life with the Weeknd's
Totally.
Blinding Lights.
Totally.
Obviously.
Although I will say what is the cover? Real Big Fish what's the cover of the ska cover of that? I think it's one of the great covers of all time.
Oh wow. I never played that.
I actually don't
Yeah.
know.
You're gonna have to send that to us.
I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
Real Big Fish.
I remember that. I remember that.
I mean, I know Real Big Fish,
Yeah,
but
me too.
They just punch it up in a ska, like lots of horns, that type of thing. Anyway,
Nice.
Very cool.
Indeed.
And then you need to give us a deep track for 80s, right?
So yes, my deep track, and this is one I'm excited about. This one. This is one I don't play it a lot, but it has never failed to get a phenomenal reaction. But it is "You Can Call Me Al" by Paul Simon.
Wow. Now again, straight up or a remix? Because I have a remix of that.
It's like a kind of a re-edit, but it's not much of a remix. But when you just drop it from like the horns, like everybody I don't think a lot of people even know the name of the song. I would not be surprised if people, but they know those horns in the song. And
And did they go right into that simple dance step that who does the dance step in the video? Is it Paul Simon does it?
Oh yeah.
While Chevy Chase plays, or
yeah, Chevy Chase.
Yeah, that's a great video as well. Very fun. Wow, I'll have to try that, Dave. That to me is a cocktail hour, doors open type song. I don't think I've ever tried to drop that in a dance set. Next time I have a crowd that I trust not to run off the dance floor, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah,
one.
I have never, like I said, I don't play at every wedding, but I have never had that song fail. And never had it not get like a really good, and that's definitely one that you don't, mix in slowly. You either just drop it or mix it at full volume so that people hear those full, horns or synths right away. Yeah.
Right. Joe, were you happy with your 80s selection?
Yes, I was. Thank you.
And they were actually from the 80s?
Yes, they were. Billie Jean, I Want to Dance with Somebody, and then Higher Love was my deep
Very
cut.
cool.
Win-win.
All right, so now we jump up to 90s, and we have two 90s categories. We'll start with hip hop.
You know what, Dave? Let me jump.
Go ahead.
What happened was
you need to.
I did. Here's what happened.
Part of what's the precipice of what turned
Here's
into
what
this
happened.
show.
And I set him up because I'm like, Joe, this is your wheelhouse.
I know. Here's what happened. Was I was going through the Serato crates. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, much less what song came out in what decade. So my 90s hip hop list was relabeled, or the 2000 list and the 90s list was flipped. And so I just pulled quickly 3 songs. These are definitely from the 90s. California Love, Tupac, Gin and Juice, Snoop and Dre. And then my deep cut is The Choice Is Yours by Black Sheep.
Nice.
Representing North Carolina,
Very
by the
cool.
way. They were from New York, but they met down here, I think, at one of the
By the way, speaking of North Carolina, I don't know if you saw, I told you I had a North Carolina bride and groom, and I dropped that Pablo Petey.
Petey Pablo, yeah.
Pablo,
Petey
and
Pablo.
it crushed.
Yes.
And I was like, I wish I was recording. I was like, I should send this to Joe.
Yes.
Anyway, all right.
Okay,
Dave,
so those
I'm
are my
looking
90s
forward
hip
to
hop
this.
redos, and I'm very happy with them. Thank you.
Very
Let's
cool.
move to
Yeah,
Digital
much
Dave.
better.
So I had Gin and Juice actually, Joe. So
Nice.
there you go.
I feel good.
And I had Back That Ass Up by Juvenile.
Yes.
Back That Thing Up.
Sure.
And then I had 2 deep cuts for this because I just
Give us two.
I could go so many million. I could list 100 songs in this category. But so my two deep cuts were Big Papa by Biggie. And there's a lot of Biggie songs that, Mo Money, Mo Problems, Hypnotized, sure. Juicy, that you feel like get played all the time. And Big Papa was a well-known song, but I get like great reactions from it. And I don't think it's the first song that everybody's thinking of when they think of a Biggie song. And then the other one, which is a huge song for me and definitely ends up sometimes even being a closer for me with the right crowd, was Killing Me Softly by the Fugees.
Wow. Ooh, I love that.
People love to sing that. If you get the right crowd, like they make sure to get to the bridge, you know, after the second chorus, and people just go nuts to that song.
Love.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Sticking in the 90s, we do 90s pop. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. Yeah, you already did yours. You were happy.
Good. Yeah, no, I'm good. Moving
90s
on.
pop.
Okay, so I actually had Backstreet Boys, Everybody.
Nice.
And I actually ended up with doing, it's the only genre I did this with, but I actually did a double Backstreet Boys. I went Everybody, and I went it that way.
Wow.
If I had to take my two 90s pop songs that I get the best. Now, caveat, I will say, I don't really play Wannabe by the Spice Girls unless I get requests for it. To me, that's a bit cheesier than I want to go. I'm sure that could be in this list if it was something that was in my normal,
it was one of my
wheelhouse.
It was on mine too.
It's just a little bit. I don't like to, I mean,
I don't like it either.
It's somewhat cheesy, but yeah,
There's I draw the line.
He draws the line, right?
I draw the
line with the Spice Girls.
You're not us and we're not you. That's okay. Right. That's Digital Dave, everybody.
And by the way, I got a lot of compliments on C'est La Vie. A lot of people hit me up afterwards and said that was a cool.
Yeah, I do remember that.
There. So, what's the 90s pop deep track?
So my 90s pop deep track, I wouldn't exactly call this deep as in people don't know it, but I don't think hardly any DJs play this. And I've been getting even like currently phenomenal reactions from it, which is I'll Be There For You by the Rembrandts, which is obviously the theme from Friends.
Yeah.
And I think right now you're dealing with a lot of people that were, in the age range where they watched and loved that show.
Good point.
Back in the day. And the way it actually started out was I was completely unplanned, and and this is a reason to always pay attention to best man and maid of honor toast, and not just be, on your phone spacing out. I actually had a maid of honor talking about how her and the bride's favorite show was Friends, and how they had watched it for years and loved this show. And so I was like, you know what? I was like, at some point in the night, I'm going to play this, and it just slayed. And I'm like, I'm going to kind of keep this in the rotation and play it once in a while. So
awesome. What Dave just said there is gold, by the way. Pay attention to toasts. You will often add a song or two to your playlist just from hearing what people have to say.
That's a great point, Mike. And I'll give you an example from last weekend. I could see early on that the father of the bride was kind of struggling with his toast. He was reading it, but he was also throwing in some dad jokes, which must have been an inside thing between he and his daughter. So I've Googled, or not Googled, I went into the Serato search and I typed a rim shot, and I must have at some point downloaded from Bobby Morgenstein a rim shot. So he got to about the third one and it was like something, and I hit that thing and people went nuts. And it was literally nothing but a pop, pop, psh. And he looked back like, yeah, you got me. Anyway.
I had a father of the bride about a year ago. His toast went on forever, and he even apologized a couple times.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry. I know this.
But he didn't stop.
No,
he didn't stop. So
he paid for it.
I get the microphone back, and I look at my wrist, even though I don't have a watch, and I go, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the night. Thank you all."
Thank you.
And I was hoping he wasn't pissed at me, but he smiled and he waved.
That's awesome. I thought you were going to say you started playing like the Oscars, like playing him out, playing him off. No. My mulligan here, sidebar, because everybody thought Belle Biv DeVoe Poison was too common, which it probably is. I don't know if a lot of people play this, but I drop it every once in a while on that 90s pop, and I guess it would fall into that. Crazy Town Butterfly. Remember those guys?
Cool.
I love that song.
I love that song back.
I looked up the video last night. It's so bad, but I do love the song. All right, you can move.
All right, new millennium punk pop. First of all, did I name this category correctly, Dave?
Okay,
Punk
so
pop.
it's interesting. I think the category is named correctly. The issue for me, and I actually had this as an honorable mention. I already had this set up to explain. Every song from that era that would be popular in the rock vein would be punk pop, except for the Killers, which they have some of the biggest songs in that era, and they would be more either like considered alternative or like synth pop, pop punk, post new wave, a lot of different ways they could be categorized. But, they're a little more, punk pop's usually a little, well, I mean, they are faster, but punk pop usually has like less chords and is just like the little 3-member
brattier.
bands.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So the Killers, I had, Mr. Brightside as honorable mention because that is the number one song I would play from that era,
Totally.
rock wise. But
Big on the draft.
I would not, but that I would not consider, pop punk. So, but I think it's named correctly. It just, the unfortunate thing is it would, on a technicality level, it would eliminate the Killers in my
Did
mind.
one of us put the Killers in? I forget.
I believe.
I thought you did.
I think
Did
you
I?
did,
Okay.
Mike. Yeah,
Okay.
I believe
All
you
right.
did, Mike.
Thanks for calling me.
So my two. So if I'm going actual pop punk, and I'm sticking to pop punk, I'm going "Sugar We're Going Down Swinging" by Fall Out Boy.
Okay.
That is definitely not the theme song of the Tampa Bay Rays. As they watched call strikes for the last 2 outs of the night last night. And the anthem by Good Charlotte, which
I love that.
I believe there is. I have video of you and Brian B singing this, Joe.
Yes, I love this
Collective.
song.
So now I'm fascinated to hear your deep track because I would consider both of those great songs, but I would have put them in the deeper version of this. So
I'm ready, yeah.
So where are you going with your deep track?
For pop punk, I would not put those in deeper. But my deep track, this was one of the very easy deep tracks for me. I only had one song in consideration, and that is Paramore's "Misery Business."
I love them.
And that was like that was the one kind of girl, and there were so many guys that were pop punk artists, and that was like the one big female anthem. And if you have especially like a bride and bridesmaids that are into pop punk and play that song, that is a sing-along chorus for them, at least for that segment of the crowd. And if I have a crowd that I know is kind of going with pop punk, that is definitely my go-to deep cut.
I'm gonna have to look for that and add it because I'm not even familiar with the song.
I actually like ride around and listen to this type of music, to be honest with you.
I know you mentioned that. So do you want to give us another one?
I do. I had lit my own worst enemy as my deep cut, but I threw in last night into this live stream set, Newfound Glory, My Friends Over You. I love that band and I love that song. So there's mine.
I'll give you another one too, just because I get a request for this from time to time. I don't think I've ever played it without a request, but Ocean Avenue, Yellow Card.
I played that last night too. I love that song.
The few times I played it by request, I mean, literally, it's the bridal party and the bride and groom, everyone huddled around singing every single word, and it just kind of goes over like that. So. All right.
Banger.
So now we have two topics that Dave suggested. So all three of us are going to give our 2+1 here. So how do you want to do this, Dave? You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
So
first topic is 2000s hip hop.
Yes. So 2000s hip hop.
So Joe can just repeat what he gave for 2000s.
No, I didn't. I did not.
Drop it like it's hot and party up. I
did not.
So for people who didn't listen or didn't see the Facebook conversation, the way that this whole show came about was Joe had Party Up in Here by DMX and Drop It Like It's Hot as his 90s hip hop songs. And I'm having one of those moments where I'm driving into my car listening to that episode, screaming at the car radio, like
texting me while driving, like, you realize you just effed this up, bro. And I'm like, oh,
like, I'm like, I lived through this era. I'm like, I don't need to look this up. I'm like, I know both of those songs were in the 2000s. DMX was close. DMX was 2000, but Drop It Like It's Hot was like 2004. And I'm like, Joe,
you blew it, bro.
So that's what turned into this episode. But so for 2000s hip hop, again, just like 90s hip hop, I could list so many songs and I could go so many directions. So I wanted to kind of list one more down tempo song and one, more in the teens so that there was some variety in this. So Whatever You Like by T.I.
Love.
And and 1-2 Step by Sierra and Missy Elliott.
Love that.
Yeah, you kill that song. You play that at almost every event, right? 1-2 Step.
So good.
Yeah, that's and it's funny because that's one of those songs for me I took a long time off of. I did not play it for a long time, like anywhere, and then I brought it back, and it's just goes
Slaps.
off for me.
Yeah.
So
and then hold on before you do deep, since we haven't participated in this, let's all give
Okay,
our
right,
no-brainers
yeah.
That's
and
fine,
then go
that's
deep
fine.
track. So Joe, what are your no-brainers in 2000s hip hop?
Bring Him Out, T.I. So I'm also
Okay.
on the T.I. train there. Be Faithful, Fat Man Scoop, which I guess is more of a party bridge than a song. Well, I don't
All right,
know. It's
so that's your no-brainers.
I'll
no
give that a song.
no brainers.
All right. So well, hold on. Hold
okay.
on. We're gonna
Gotcha.
save our deep track. So
Got
my
it.
no-brain. I'm shocked nobody named my no-brainers. I think these are the two most popular from that era. Well, although you're gonna argue with me, is Crazy in Love hip hop? I mean, Jay-Z raps in it.
Jay-Z
so,
is in it.
and Usher.
I'll allow it.
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
Which again is probably technically maybe R&B, not hip hop, but I mean I'm gonna put those two songs together. I play them back to back all the time, and they're just my two no-brainers.
Allowing it.
All right, thank you. And Dave is not texting me on the slide, so I guess he allows it to. All right, so deep track. Dave.
So I went, kind of stole your concept, Mike, and I went with a deep cut and a deeper cut here. So my deep cut is, and this was again another one that was very easy for me. It's something I used to play at almost every wedding. I still play a decent amount. Was Public Service Announcement by Jay-Z.
God, I love that.
To me, that is the biggest reaction from any Jay-Z song I ever get at events, whether it's a nightclub or a wedding. And, to me, I would definitely consider that a deep cut because it was never released. It was one of those rare album cuts that just became super, super popular. It's very short. I mean, there's like a gap in the middle, but,
where
and
it
then a
talks.
skit, and then it goes back into the song. But it's usually the part that you would play is only 46 seconds long.
Jeez.
But everybody knows every
Allow
word
me
of
to
that.
reintroduce myself. Yes.
My name is Hope. Yeah, people get excited when that drops. And then my deeper cut, which I've been getting great responses and reactions from, is I think you'll like this one, Joe. Is Some Cut by Trillville.
Wow. I have not played that in
Again, I'm shaking my head because I don't even. Maybe when I look it up
deep.
later and
You
hear
will.
it,
You will.
I'll recognize it, but I don't even recognize that. I'm being schooled here. I love it. That's
a good
I
one.
love getting taken to school. Cool. Joe, what's your deep track?
Circling back on P.D. Pablo, Raise Up. I mean, that's like a North Carolina anthem.
Yeah,
there was an All Cities
I would say
remix.
that's probably a regional thing. I don't know. Like I said, I dropped it 2 weeks ago, but because I had a couple from North Carolina,
Right.
I don't know if I dropped that on a normal.
I know.
crowd,
That's
if
why
they
I'm
would
calling
recognize
it. That's why I'm calling it deep, though.
Okay.
I guess.
So I can say I've mostly nowadays only ever played that with a North Carolina crowd, but I know back when that song was new that in Pittsburgh that worked great. It was one of the biggest hip hop songs for a moment with any crowd, back in the early to mid 2000s. Now, I haven't played it at weddings that haven't had North Carolina people in recent history. However, I can say that in the 2000s, that song was huge up here too. So.
Okay.
All right, so I went with Be Faithful for my deep track. And the main reason is I started talking about this song. I think the first time I brought that up was in our original Top 40 show, which was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I had a number of DJs tell me they had never heard the song. They added it to their set. I know, Dave, trust me, I don't want to call anybody out, but I got emails from people afterwards saying, thank you. I never even...
Jeez.
Or maybe never heard of it, but I never used to play that song, and now it goes over great. So even though I don't think it's a no-brainer, because I think it's a pretty obvious song from that genre, I'm going to include it because of the reaction that I've gotten from people in my industry.
Yeah. Well, I think that to me is a no-brainer club song, and maybe it's not, that was from around 2000 to, 2010. I mean, that was probably, I would maybe even put it beyond Party Up in terms of crowd reaction, is like a nightclub song.
Yeah.
And a fun fact about that, I actually I know Fat Man Scoop from working with him in clubs, and I actually have a custom version that at the end goes Fat Man Scoop, Digital Dave.
Oh my God.
So, that song's gotten a lot of play from me over.
Hey, guess
over the
what?
years.
I don't have that.
I don't have that either.
But Batman
have a cool
Joe
name.
Bunn doesn't. It doesn't have the same ring.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, he would say Michael, and then he'd go, "I'm not saying Michael."
Right.
All right, you're a dork. All right, so let's wrap it up. This is a genre that I don't even really think I completely understand.
Yeah.
Because EDM to me just sounds like new dance music. Maybe somebody can clearly define what the difference between it is. But let's go with our 2 no-brainer EDM songs.
You want to go, Mike?
Yeah, you want to? I'll give you my first 2, and you can tell me whether they are actually EDM. We Found Love and Titanium.
Wow, I've got We Found Love as well, so I hope that counts.
So are they technically EDM, Dave?
I would consider them. I would definitely.
He's allowing it.
I didn't embarrass myself.
He's allowing it. He's allowing it.
Right.
My other one besides We Found Love was Levels of Avicii.
Okay.
I think. Would you allow that, Dave?
So my 2 were Titanium by David Guetta and Sia, and Pursuit of Happiness by Steve Aoki and Kid Cudi.
Wow, I freaking love
I would
that
consider
song.
that a little bit of a deeper track. I don't play that often, but it is a fan. I mean,
Well, I guess
obviously
for the
we get different crowds.
genre, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah, that would definitely be my 2. I mean, Levels would be something that would definitely be worth considering. Obviously, We Found Love.
Yeah.
Any of the Swedish House Mafia tracks from back then. Clarity by Zed would fit into that.
Clarity, I definitely considered. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I've been noticing that I've talked about a little bit is that I'm getting brides and grooms. When that music was popular around 2013 to 16, I was getting a lot of wedding requests for it, and then it trailed off a little bit. But I've seen that come back, and I think what's happening is I think brides and grooms are getting married that met and began dating during that period. And a big thing to do was also to go to festivals and see all these artists perform. And so I think from the nostalgia standpoint, it was like this was what meant something to us when we first met. I think it's coming back around that you're getting EDM requests are on the rise again at weddings specifically.
Nice.
This is a great point. That nostalgia. I always think of nostalgia as going back to when they were teenagers. But yeah, a lot of times, and that's where wedding songs come from. A lot of times when a couple gives you their wedding song, it was something that was popular 5 years ago when they first started dating. That's a great point about dance music nostalgia. Excellent point, Dave.
What was
Joe,
the deep one, Mike?
Give us your. My deep one is I have a mashup, which I don't play a lot of, but Play Hard versus Boneless. David Guetta and Neo, and I dropped this in on crowds at that last half hour rager, and it goes over great. So, and I think it's technically EDM, so I'm gonna try to squeeze that one in. I hope it is.
Everybody knows I'm low key in love with Jared Leto, so mine is "Do or Die" remix from Afrojack and 30 Seconds to Mars. I love that song.
Very cool.
Okay.
All right,
this was good stuff. I haven't been watching Facebook. Have people been?
Facebook is out of control. There's like 80 comments. There's 40 people watching. Everybody's just throwing their choices.
I want to go back.
Yeah, go back and look.
Now, and we can go back. I mean, I know we're live now, but the thread will still be there, right? We can
This one,
because I went back and rewatched the last one.
It's in the public DJ's Vault group.
So I'm sorry, I rushed ahead. Did we get Dave's deep track here?
So we did not get my deep track. My deep track was Heads Will Roll by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
Oh, man.
That is one of my favorite dance records of all time.
I just put that in my new Halloween mix, which you favorited.
Yes.
So you clearly favored it without listening.
No. Well, I listened to some of it, and I can prove I listened to some of it because you actually started out with the same 2 songs as I started out with on my new Halloween mix, which was Hell's Bells followed by This Is Halloween.
Did I drop it before you? Because I didn't steal from you. You know that.
I know you didn't know. Mine.
That's crazy. Out of all the songs,
it was mine. Yours dropped first, but mine was made weeks ago.
That's awesome.
You started with the same first 2 songs as I did.
Damn, that's correct. Mike, look at
I'm
you.
honored. I know, I'm honored. And did you put Heads Will Roll in it?
Yes, heads will roll.
Because I
Heads
think
Will
that
Roll
song is great. Dance.
I love that.
Yeah, dance.
Yes,
Yeah.
but no, I do need to listen to more. I did start listening to it, but I didn't get through it all. But I do want to continue.
I purposely, if anyone's interested, it's up on my Mixcloud page. I purposely didn't include the no-brainers. Like I didn't put Thriller in. I didn't put Ghostbusters in. I didn't put. I always feel like somebody's watching me because I feel like those are kind of the cliche, and nothing wrong with them. But I figured they'd be in enough Halloween mixes that I tried to be a little different. And some people might like. I put Another One Bites the Dust in. Some people might say, it's not really a Halloween song, but to me, it's about people dying, so it kind of fits in. So.
All right. I mean, you got to be. Really, there's very few actual Halloween songs, and it's just creativity. I mean, mine had, Bad Moon Rising. Mine had Witchy Woman by the Eagles. But actually, my favorite, speaking of deep cuts, my favorite Halloween, I guess, quote unquote, deep cut or surprise song that everybody knows, but I feel like DJs never play as a Halloween song, at least, is On Our Own by Bobby Brown, which is the theme from Ghostbusters 2.
Oh, yeah. And I guess yes, dude. I forgot about that song.
I feel like people sleep on that song, but like people, I mean, every time I play, even when I play it outside of Halloween, someone always comes up and they're like, it's the Ghostbusters 2 theme, and people always think of the original Ghostbusters theme because it's titled Ghostbusters, but the Ghostbusters 2 theme was actually pretty.
So have you dropped your Halloween mix yet, or are we waiting on that?
My Halloween mix is up. So, and so the one, and I don't know if we prepped for this or not. The last thing that I had thrown out in my last email, I had mentioned doing a 2000s pop category, and Mike, you responded.
Yeah.
Okay, because you responded and you're like, "Oh, that's a good idea," and then I guess maybe it didn't. So I'll still give mine. I don't know if
give yours.
If you on the spot think of anything
off the top of my head.
But some of the things. Part of why I said this in my email was I was thinking of 2000s pop and how much of it I play at a wedding, and things like Miley Cyrus and Kelly Clarkson, and I'm like, I think it's definitely worth having a category. So. My two no-brainer songs were Holla Back Girl by Gwen Stefani and You Belong With Me by Taylor Swift, actually.
Oh, damn. Wow. I didn't see that coming.
It is, and it is crazy. And I never really even played that song in like a dancing type situation when it was new, but it is crazy the reactions I get to. If there's any song I could suggest to someone out of this list that is, to me, in my mind, not risky, like it might not fall on its face, other than maybe the Paul Simon. But I mean, I would say literally, if you don't play that, try playing that, because that's just in a great age range for people getting married now. That was out when they were in like middle school or high school.
Yep.
And to me, the one thing that just always sticks in my mind as a cultural music moment is, the 2008 VMAs, and she like performed it in a New York City subway, and people were going nuts. And then that was the same year that, Kanye
bum rushed her,
the mic off her, and that is just such an iconic VMA. Yeah, that to me was such an iconic moment. But I've actually literally played this song in a club where I'm playing mostly hip hop, and it has gone over. So.
Damn.
Play that record.
Do you have a deep track then from there?
My deep track is Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield.
Ooh.
I drop that all the time now, and it's so good. That is so good.
Would you consider Sexy back in that genre?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely Justin Timberlake, and even like the early, because the last NSYNC, the No Strings Attached, like the Bye 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 and stuff, that was 2000 as well. So, but Sexy Back, Rock Your Body would be in there. The Fergie stuff, Glamorous, Fergalicious.
London Bridge, I love that.
Yeah, London Bridge, the early Black Eyed, the mid 2000s Black Eyed Peas, like My Humps. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff in the 2000s pop category for sure.
So good.
Boy, this is
good, man.
Chock full of information.
Yes, man.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Dude, thank you, Dave. Seriously, this was great. And everybody watching on Facebook, thank you all so much. I know we ran long today, but I think it was well worth it. Mike, why don't you tease next week? Because I totally forgot.
Next week is episode 200. A reminder that if you haven't gotten your intro in, you have a couple days left, but they have to be into me by Saturday. So new intro, outro for the podcast.
We'd love to have them.
little better music. I think I've got about 7 or 8, and I've got some real good ones. So I'll be sending them all to Joe, and we'll be picking. I think we're going to make that part of the show next week. I think we'll probably preview the ones.
Yeah.
But then also next week, we have one of the stars of the new movie Borat.
Yes, I remember.
New movie Borat from that is now
I
streaming
say
on
it different
Amazon.
than you. I say Borat.
Borat, one of them, whichever. One of the stars of that show will be on our show next week. How's that?
Yes, that's great.
Is that enough of a teaser, Richie Stedman?
Yeah.
Please tune in next week. It is episode 200. It's something.
Yeah, man. So we'll probably, Mike, are we going to go ahead and commit to Wednesday, 9 a.m. a week from today?
Yeah, I think we can record Wednesday 9 a.m.
All right. So for those of you watching it live, we'll be on Wednesday, 9 a.m. live with our 200th episode. So thank you, Digital Dave. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks so much for coming on.
And early congratulations to you both.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on. The one and only double guest. Thanks, everybody. We'll see y'all next week.
Ciao.
See you guys.